Thank goodness we have the Zoom robot lady to tell us what's going on. Okay, today we're talking about how to become a booked out freelance writer on your own schedule without having to work for pennies. Now, I get a ton of questions from folks who are more experienced, but I also get lots and lots of questions for people who are just beginning, or they have maybe they've been on like one of the marketplace sites like Upwork or Fiverr, and they're trying to get off it. Um, it seems to be kind of a mix, but we don't know how to get started. And the main big question is, how do we find clients? So we're going to talk about that today, and about kind of what this gig really looks like when you're doing it and when things are going well, and what the ramp up period looks like and all of that. So if you have questions, go ahead and drop them in the chat, and I will get to them when I get to some stopping points. I may also have to do a little bit of coughing because I have been sick this week. But it's not you, it's me. Okay. First, I wanted to start off with what what even is freelance writing? What is it and what is it not? Because there are a lot of folks who come into this particular writing gig with some, I might say, misconceptions. So freelance writing is a viable work from anywhere option, and it is. As long as you have an internet connection and a laptop, you can be a freelance writer. Now, you need more stuff than that, but the basics, in terms of working from anywhere, are that you, as a freelancer, you should not be limited by location. This is a particular work from home gig that is flexible, it's easily customized to your needs. Ultimately, it is what you make of it. So there are countless directions you can go. Um, the process is pretty simple and straightforward. It is also accessible, even if you don't think of yourself as a writer. I do not think of myself as a writer in the sense that I have the next great American novel like burgeoning in my soul. Like, I'm not that kind of a writer. I wanted to be a journalist. I'm like, I don't even read novels. I read nonfiction. I liked blogs because they were nonfiction and they presented interesting ideas, right? So I'm like a give me the facts kind of writer. I'm not like an author. So this is something that is accessible to you. One question I get a lot is freelance writing possible with a pseudonym? And the answer to that is yes. You have to do a little bit of paperwork on the back end. But I will tell you that Ashley Gaynor is not my name. It's not my real name. I should say it's not my full name. Gaynor is not my last name. Um, Ashley is my first name. And let's see. Freelance writing is freedom. And this is something I talk about a lot. This is a big part of um, the message that I want to get out there is that freelance writing is it's a viable path to freedom, and you get to define what freedom is, and you get to define how and when you get there. Um, but that is what is at, that's the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. Freelance writing is not a get rich quick thing, and if you see people talking about how they went from like 0 to 6 figures in 21 days. I mean, that's an exaggeration, but you know the kind I'm talking about, who are like, oh my gosh, it's so easy. I just started and then suddenly I was having 5 figure months, and the process is simple, and I'm going to show you how to do it too. That's really not how it works. There are some people who are able to do that, but like they're outliers, and they have specific skills that they can leverage, and they are probably getting coaching from day one. That is not a typical story. Um, Sorry, there goes my throat. Freelance writing typically is not writing novels and personal essays. Um, a lot of times, people who identify as writers, who consider themselves to be writers, want to do this kind of creative writing, and there is a way that you can do that, but it's really difficult to carve out that niche, and that's not something I can help you with. And that is more of the ghostwriting bent as opposed to freelance writing. Now, you can be a ghostwriter as a freelance writer. There is some commingling, but it's a different kind of writing if this is what you want to be doing. It is not one size fits all. You can make your writing business fit to your life and your needs. I'm a prime example of that because my life has taken radical shifts over the past 10 years, and writing has always worked. It has not always worked to bring in like a six-figure income or anything like that, but I was able to get what I needed out of a freelance writing business for the moment in time that I was in. Um, it is simple, it is not necessarily easy. Um, it is also not the only thing that you can do as a freelancer. A freelancer is a service provider, and there are innumerable services you can provide. So, a lot of kind of crossover services I see, people want to do writing and they want to do editing, or they want to do writing and proofreading, or maybe they want to do writing and graphic design so they can pair services, or web design, or web coding, or being a virtual assistant, or being a bookkeeper, or being um, a coach. Well, that's less freelance, so that's a different kind of service you provide. But it's not the only thing you can do as a freelancer. You can be a freelance photographer, you can be a freelance nanny, you can be all kinds of other things. So if you decide to go the freelance writing way, just know that you're not necessarily boxed in. I know a lot of folks who got started as writing and then they moved into like funnel building, which has more to do with um, putting together entire sales funnels and things like that. There's a lot of options, or you can do basically what I've done, which is just become a better writer and charge more for your writing. I've done all the other stuff, but this is really what I do. I'm a copywriter. It's what I do. Okay. Oh, this is my old slide presentation. Let me pull up the correct one here. And this is the PDF. Is this going to open? This is going to do what we wanted to do. Where were we? We were freelance writing might be ideal if you enjoy writing and you're willing to write just about anything. Now, within reason, you can set your own limits. When I was an editor, there were certain types of books I would not edit. For example, no one has asked me to write stuff that I wouldn't be willing to write. But you can say, I don't want to do copy, or I don't want to do emails, or I don't want to do social media. I say that. I don't want to do social media. It might be ideal if you are willing to write whatever your clients ask so that you can fund your own writing adventures after hours. Now, I got this way of thinking. This isn't something I had thought about because I'm not writing in my spare time. But my friend Nick Pavlidis, he does the Get Paid to Write podcast, and he runs the Ghostwriter Growth group on Facebook. Great guy, so smart, super knowledgeable. He talks to a lot of folks who do come at this wanting to be writers and not knowing how to get paid for it. So he talks about do your paid client work, even if it's not the stuff that is like soul fulfilling, so that you can have money to then fund your creative writing. So if that is something you're after, you're on the right path. Now, you might not get paid to write the stuff you really want to write, but you can get paid to write stuff you don't really care about writing, so that you have money to be able to write the stuff that you want to write. You can enjoy discovering it might be ideal if you enjoy discovering new things and you like the process of writing. If you write, to fulfill your soul and to express your creativity, and that is why you love writing so much, you may struggle a little bit. I don't even want to say struggle. It'll require a little bit of a different approach. But if you like discovering new things, you like the process of researching and writing and stringing sentences together and finding things that work and that kind of thing, it really could work for you. If you want a flexible work schedule, you enjoy the idea of not having a boss breathing down your neck, I am that person. That's a big reason why I got into freelance writing. I didn't want anyone breathing down my neck. Let's see. If you prefer communicating via email, for the most part, this can be ideal. Now, there are some pockets out there in the writing world where it's all very much like phone calls or like Zoom meetings, or if you're working for a local agency, maybe they want to meet face to face. But it is entirely possible to skip a lot of the in-person conversation and do a lot of your communication via email or via Facebook Messenger, or whatever other electronic device or app you like to use. These days, I do a mix. I do a lot of interaction via email when I need to do kind of a concentrated burst of interaction. For example, when we're just starting a project together or when we're trying to figure out if I'm the right writer, then I like to get on Zoom. But otherwise, just emailing back and forth or messaging back and forth is enough. So we'll have kind of like a burst of activity in the beginning where we're face to face, but then everything else is just managed via email, and that works really nicely. So if the idea of like talking to people freaks you out a little bit, just know that you don't have to do a ton of it. Now, the more of it that you're willing to do, the more opportunities you'll have. But I think the first time I spoke live with a client, I think it was on the phone, and I think it was like 4 years into my writing. So I went 4 years without having to talk to anybody on the phone. It was pretty nice. You know, it's doable. Um, you might be a freelance writer if you're into the idea of working whenever and wherever and wearing whatever you want. So what I'm saying by this is that if you need to be around people and you need to be interacting face to face with people a lot, and you love it when folks interrupt you, like come into your office just to chat, and you really want the water cooler, you might feel a little bit isolated. Um, and we'll talk about this a little bit more in, I don't know if it's the next slide, but coming up. But if you like the idea of being able to go and have full control over your schedule and your location, some people find that intimidating. Some people thrive, absolutely thrive in that environment, or they find that ideal for their circumstances. If you've got kids, kids don't always operate on a schedule. I mean, we want them to, but they don't always. So that kind of flexibility can be really nice. If your hairdresser only has an appointment at 3 o'clock on Thursday, or else you're waiting until September, and you want to be able to take those appointments, it can be nice. You know, that's like kind of a low priority example, but the flexibility is so cool. Let me keep an eye on time. I think I'm kind of rambling. I'm going to go faster. If you are consistent and you can stick to a deadline, if not beat it, and this is very important. Once you get into this world of online freelance work, you're going to start hearing horror stories about the flakes, and there are so many flakes. So if you are a person who is like going to miss a deadline and you don't feel it necessary to alert anyone, or you're just going to ghost them, or you know that you're going to miss this deadline, but you don't want to say anything because you're scared you're going to get yelled at, you can't do that to your clients. You can't do that. So you have to be willing to be consistent and to stick to deadlines. That has to be a thing that you can do and that you can commit to. Otherwise, you're going to make yourself and everyone around you miserable. And I recommend that you find something else to do. And also, if you can create decent chunks of time, and by that I mean like 90 minutes, an hour, maybe 2 hours, multiple times a week, um, that is ideal. I find that I need to take a break every 90 minutes or maybe every 2 hours. So I really only need a chunk of time that's about that long. And so if my kid has a really consistent nap schedule and they have a really consistent bedtime, then I know I can get, the nap time, 90-minute nap time, and then from 8 p.m. on to have quiet writing time to do my work. And for the first number of years, let me think, for the first probably 2.5, 3.5 years of my business, that was enough. That was enough. And I could keep the bills paid and the lights on and the fridge had food in it. And it was enough. I mean, we weren't rolling in dough or anything, but I was meeting my goals. But you have to be able to get those chunks of time with some consistency. For some of us, it's easier than it is for others of us. Okay, now I said a minute ago, when you're a freelancer, you are a service provider, and that's a type of business. The service provider model is a business model. So I want to take a look at what that actually looks like. So other service providers you might be familiar with, your dentist, the roof repair guy, the guy who comes and sprays your house for all the bugs. You work online, so maybe you have like a typical online service provider. I don't even know. Like an appointment setter might be an online service provider. Um, as a service provider, you have clients, not customers. We refer to the people who hire us as clients. This is a business. Your writing thing itself is a business, and you are the boss of your business. Your client is not your boss. Your client is your client. You are the boss of your writing business. That means you can stay solo you can just be a solo service provider until the end of time, which is mostly what I've done. I did some other things. You can grow a team, which means that maybe you have um, someone you do the writing and someone does graphic design for you. Maybe you can start an agency if you want. So you have other writers who write your stuff, who like your agency gets hired and you write some of it, but also your other writers write some of it. That's an agency. You can do whatever you want. I experimented with an agency model about 2 years ago, decided I hated the people management part of it, and I just went back to being solo. When that gig, it's sort of, excuse me, naturally resolved, and I realized that I'm perfectly happy being a solo service provider because I like to do the writing. To me, the writing is the best part. It's the most interesting part, and that's what I want to do. So I don't want to build all this other stuff. Other people are like, yeah, I want to do an agency. The profit tends to be higher in an agency. You can get a bigger name for yourself. You can maybe turn it into a business, like a brand that can be sold. And then there's a lot more money in there, and all of that. But that's a possibility. These are just some options when you're starting out as a service provider. If you are just starting out, I probably shouldn't have even mentioned all this stuff because you don't necessarily need to know it yet. But anyway, as a I'm like rewriting myself as I'm censoring myself as we go. Will you all let me know in the chat if this is helpful, or if you're on video and you think this is helpful, will you give me a thumbs up? I'm seeing some thumbs up. Okay, good. I'm really hoping to answer a lot of the major questions I get. The other thing that I love about the service provider model, especially for freelance writers in particular, is the overhead is just ridiculous. It's astonishingly low. You need a computer, you need internet access, which the vast majority of us, if not all of us, will have anyway. Part of your overhead is self-employment taxes. So once there's all this tax law that comes into play, and I'm not a tax expert, but I believe the threshold is $400. Once you make $400 within a calendar year, that's when you need to start paying self-employment taxes, and there's like all this stuff that determines what it is. But it's typically going to be between 20 and 28%, depending on what your household income is. I just always set aside 25% of what I earn. So like, that's it. That's all you need. You need a computer, you need internet access. Optional, you can get some training. Training is not necessarily necessary, but it does help you get better and faster. It helps you leapfrog. It helps you get more income coming in more quickly. But again, it's not a requirement. You might want to build a website for yourself. That comes with some expenses. I think my first website, I paid $10 for the domain and maybe $100 for a year of hosting. There are some places you can buy a domain and you get the first year of hosting free. Or you can buy a hosting plan and you get a domain free. Fairly low cost. Also that's another nice to have, not a requirement to get started. And that's it. Like, that's it. You can use free software to do just about everything else. Pretty sweet. Now, I want to go into some, and I've touched on some of these, the deep, dark secrets that nobody will tell you, which is kind of a joke. But something we don't always think about. You're going to face some rejection as a freelance writer. However, it's not the end of the world. It's okay. It's part of the package. It's just not everyone is going to be a yes. If you go into this expecting everyone to be a yes, your expectations are off. That's all, because no one has a 100% yes rate. Sometimes you're going to face a lot more rejection than you anticipated. Yes, someone's asking if this will be accessible later. Yes, there's going to be a recording. I'll send out an email with the link to the recording. Yes. Okay, so you're free to go. If you need to peace out, go ahead and peace out. Okay, sometimes there is a lot of rejection. If you experience no reply as rejection, it's going to feel a lot bigger. To me, no reply is just no reply. I don't take it as a rejection. I take it as like I'm not what they needed at the time. When you are in the throes of feeling rejection, um, take a deep breath. Think about what's the worst that could happen. Like, what is the actual worst case scenario of what happens if you send an email and they don't go for you? In my experience, the worst thing that could happen in my imagination, all kinds of things could happen. But in reality, the worst thing that could happen is you get maybe a snippy email. Maybe someone is unkind to you in an email. And like that's it. That's really the worst thing that can happen. Can you handle an unkind email? If the answer is yes, proceed to the next step. If the answer is no, this is probably not the right opportunity for you. The truth is, most of the time, the vast majority of the time, I'm trying to think if anyone ever told me off. I've been doing this for 11 and a half years. I don't think anyone has ever told me off. Most of the rejection I've experienced has been silence um, but for the most part, it's thank you, I'll keep your information on file, or it's thank you, we ended up going with this other person, but we loved you. You know, it's even the no's are kind like people are good people. We're good people. And it's even the big scary unknown people are not going to go out of their way to be horrible to you. When you feel like you're stuck in rejection mode, remember why you're doing this. Go back to that concept of freedom. What is the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow for you in terms of freelance writing? You define what freedom looks like for you and remind yourself why you are doing this, and then let that motivate you to keep moving forward. For me, when I got started, I wanted to be at home with my kid, even though I was a single mom. I wasn't a single mom when I got started, but when I really got started in earnest and wanted to turn it into a real business instead of like play money, um, my goal was to stay home with my kids, or my one kid. I had one kid at a time. Now I have four, but I had one at a time. And so every time I would think, oh my gosh, I can't do this anymore. I don't want to do this. This is hard. And I would get frustrated and anxious. I had so much anxiety. I would think, okay, what are the alternatives? The alternative was I put him in daycare and I go get a job. Would I rather push through the rejection I was feeling in the moment because I didn't get a gig I wanted, or would I rather put him in daycare and go get a job? Every single time, I would rather push through the tough feelings, give myself 20 minutes to process, and then keep moving forward. Um, and you will have your thing that drives you to choose pushing through the feelings as well. Please note, all writers get rejected at some point. Many of us get rejected for a long time in the beginning. That is how we develop our superpowers. J.K. Rowling, Stephen King, Agatha Christie, Louisa May Alcott, John Grisham, all of them had to submit their first manuscripts like 60 or 100 times. And these are some of the greatest writers that we have on record. And they have all been rejected. It is just part of the gig. And it's really not that bad. It's really not that bad. No one's going to throw a pie in your face. No one's going to shout nastiness at you. But this is the thing we all get really stuck on. So that's why I'm kind of harping on that so much, because it's easy to be afraid of something you don't understand. But really what it looks like for the most part is, thank you, we went with someone else. Another kind of deep, dark, bad secret is that you will have to deal with other people. Some people don't like dealing with other people. The good news about dealing with other people is that some of the people you're dealing with are going to give you money, which is nice. That's the goal here. We want people to give us money. So to be able to do that, we have to be talking with people. People, as I like to say, they always complicate things. And sometimes people in general can get a little bit annoying. But that fact is true no matter what you're doing, no matter where you are. You will need to have a spine at times. You'll need to be able to set boundaries. But again, that is true with life in general. It's nothing new in this arena. Note that most of your interactions will be over email, unless you decide that you don't want it to be that way. But for the vast majority of us, it's over email. And most of your emails can be scripted or template based or crowdsourced before you send them. So some people get really like, oh my God, I don't know what to say to a client. Like I wouldn't know what to say. And if that's the case, well, okay, that's cool. You can use a script, you can use a template, you can get feedback, you can crowdsource, you can have people review it. Like, you never have to go out there feeling completely vulnerable and unprotected. There are always ways to give yourself more feeling of security, even when you feel nervous. And that's really what I want to say. Writers in particular are generous people. We will help you write stuff. If you're in my Inkwell Guild Facebook group, or if you're in the Journey Folk group, the student group, I don't know why you'd be in this presentation, because you'd have everything you need. But if you are, welcome anyway. But like in these student groups, you've probably seen people ask questions and folks are just so generous with answers. Like they get to them before I even see them. And it's like there'll be 8 responses of really helpful input. So that's how we are. And if you need help with a client interaction or you need help with a pitch, just reach out and ask for help. You're going to get it. You never have to do this alone. You're never on your own when it feels scary. Now, as I was mentioning before, sometimes it does get a little lonely. For some people, that's ideal. For me, that's ideal. However, for some people, it's not ideal. And when you do need some interaction, it's very easy to overcome the loneliness. The best way that I know of to do so, especially right now, is to join online communities of other writers, or at least other online service providers. Another thing that I find is really helpful for me, I didn't realize how isolated I felt until I got a co-working space. I got it, which of course I can't be there right now because my van is broken down. But when you're at a co-working space, there are people around you and you're in an office and they're mostly going to leave you alone, but there's going to be a break room and people will bring bagels, and it's like the best of having coworkers without the drama of coworkers. And then also, technology makes friendship with your fellow writers easy, even when you're worlds apart. And the one of the results of this pandemic, where we've all been in lockdown, is that now, more so than a year and a half ago, people are really a lot more familiar with online interaction and using technology to build relationships and to hang out and stuff like that. So if loneliness is a concern, there are ways to work around it if this is still something that you want to do. Now, in the beginning, we all tend to think spending money is bad. And for many of us, we just don't have money to spend, and that's fine. However, please note, you can't bootstrap forever. Caveat, yes, you probably could, but spending some money will make your life a lot easier and it will help you earn more. And that line, like that point, is different for everyone. But that line always presents itself. So if you get started because it has really low overhead and you really love the low overhead, and then you're like, I mean, I think it's funny when people get offended by like $7 or $10 or $25 a month subscriptions to services that help make our lives easier. Because it's like just constant money out of the wallet, which I get. I was that person for a really long time. And then I got really tired of making PDF invoices individually for clients and sending them. So I got a paid invoicing service, and it saved me so much time and bandwidth, and it eliminated so much annoyance that it was worth it. It was worth it. So you're going to get to the point when spending some money is worth it. And that point might be on day one. And that point might be when you're like 3 years in. And there's no right or wrong answer, but just be aware that while you could bootstrap forever, it's not always the best thing to do. I think I was, other than website fees and a couple of memberships that I joined, I basically bootstrapped for the first 4 years. I didn't have any services. I didn't have any subscriptions. I didn't have anything other than just, I think, 2 memberships in my website. Okay, so the 3 stages of a successful writing gig. You've made it through all those hurdles that I tried to cheerfully present to you. And now we are looking at what it actually looks like to do the freelance writing piece of things. Step one or stage one is prospecting. This is when you're looking for clients. You're pitching, you're marketing, maybe you're networking, you're sharing, whatever prospecting looks like for you. Number two is landing. So prospecting is like getting the attention of people. And then number two, when you land a client, that's when you have your inquiry process and you're having this, it's a sales conversation, but we don't have to call it that because I know a lot of us are afraid of things like sales conversations. But you're having your initial conversation to see if you're a good fit. Um, you maybe are negotiating terms, you're learning about the project, you're sending a contract, you're maybe taking a deposit. That's the landing. And then phase three is delivering. So that's when you do the work and you get it in by the deadline, which we have already established is critical. You're turning the edits around, you're getting paid, and then you wrap up and you move on to the next thing. So those are the three stages: the prospecting, the landing, and the delivering. Now, in terms of services to offer, what does that look like? Services you can offer. In general, what we do as freelance writers, now this is very broad strokes, very general. You can offer content writing or you can offer copywriting. You can do both. And there are other things you can do. Like I was talking about ghostwriting. Sometimes ghostwriting goes off in another direction. But generally speaking, you're going to see content and copy. So content is writing blog posts and articles, writing reports, writing case studies, which is like a customer success story, writing website content, social media, things that are more informative or educational or teachy, as I have in these slides. Copy is things like sales pages, landing pages, emails. Emails can also be content. But a lot of times these days, emails fall more under copy. Um, Facebook ads and other ads, video scripts, things that are more selling-y as opposed to teachy. That is how I sort of make the distinction. And these are all things that you can learn how to do. There are innumerable courses teaching just like each one of these things. There's no shortage of training on how to write that stuff. I even have some training on it. But anyway, these are all things that can be learned. If you don't know how to do any of this stuff right now, you don't have to worry because it is a skill that can be learned. Now, who are your clients? And a lot of us have questions about clients. So, who are the clients? You have to know who they are before you can find them. They are going to mostly be businesses and brands, not entirely. I've had a lot of like my neighbor hired me to edit his book kind of thing. But for the most part, the types of people who hire freelance writers and pay enough for it to be worth our time will be businesses and brands. So that means experts, consultants, coaches, course creators, bloggers, podcasters, nonprofits, um, local businesses like chiropractors, realtors, CPAs, the plumber down the downtown, online shops where they like sell stuff out of a Shopify store, and then regular shops and businesses that have storefronts in your town that you can go to. These are just some examples. I mean, for the most part, this is what it's going to be. Another thing I should have included on here is agencies. A lot of freelance writers work for um, marketing agencies or content agencies or web design agencies. My first job was with a web design agency. Um, my first freelance writing job, I mean. So I should have put that on here as well. So this is typically who's going to hire you. How do you find them? There are two main types of marketing: inbound marketing and outbound marketing. Um, Outbound marketing is when you go out and you are like flinging your message out there. So you are pitching, you're sending cold emails directly to people who you think might want to work with you. Cold outreach, sorry, pitching is when you're sending specific ideas that you want to write for somebody. Cold outreach is more like, hey, do you need a writer? I'm a writer. Let's work together. Networking, where you go to an event. That is an outbound. It can be somewhat inbound too, depending on how you do it. But it's like you going out into the world and putting yourself in front of people, applying to jobs on the job boards, setting out Facebook ads for yourself, which is not really something that we do, but it is a thing that is done. It's considered outbound marketing. Um, putting your business card in your kid's yearbook. That's outbound marketing. Taking out a billboard, outbound marketing. Running a radio ad, outbound marketing. Inbound marketing is when you do stuff that gets noticed by other people and then they come to you. I had a one of my ghostwriting mentor, Derek Lewis, described it as leaving breadcrumbs. So your breadcrumbs might be your website with SEO. So people search for something and they find you and they're like, oh, I should work with you. Guest posts are another breadcrumb, or bylined work. If you do client work and they let you put your name on it, that's a breadcrumb, because other people will see that and be like, oh, this girl wrote this thing. Maybe she can write some stuff for me too. Referrals are inbound, because it's like inbound is when they come to you. Outbound is when you go to them. So referrals, a lead magnet strategy, which is something that some writers do, but it's not what I would do at the very beginning. And that's when you like put a freebie out there to get your ideal clients to download it, and then you can start emailing them and then they'll come work for you. It's kind of a high level thing. Profiles like on Facebook, social activity, leaving comments, LinkedIn, stuff like that, that can be super inbound as well. So outbound is when you go to them, inbound is when they come to you. Is that clear? Does that help? I'm seeing stuff in the comments. Let's see, questions about nonprofits. The larger the nonprofit, the more of a marketing budget they're going to have. If you're working for the like housing justice nonprofit that runs in your town, they're not going to have a big marketing budget. But if you want to work for the ALS Association, it's more likely that they would have a budget to work for you. I'm sorry, to hire you. And also, one thing, I don't think I mentioned this anywhere in this presentation, but another way that you can get your foot in the door with nonprofits is if you need writing samples. My go-to when I need a new writing sample is I always call one of my go-to nonprofits and I'll be like, hey, I want to work on my homepages. Can I give you a new homepage? Or, hey, I want to learn how to write a nurture sequence. Can I write you a nurture sequence for your donors? You know, stuff like that. So if you want to get some writing experience, nonprofits typically are very happy to accept that from you. Before I started freelancing, I worked in nonprofits. I worked in all kinds of nonprofits. Nonprofits with money, nonprofits, we call them the shoebox nonprofit because we worked in a shoebox, we had no money. It really just depends. But generally speaking, the bigger their scale, like the bigger their reach, the more of a budget they're going to have. I just actually helped a nonprofit find a marketing agency. They needed like a full stack marketing agency. And marketing agencies are not cheap. So, and they're a national nonprofit. So if you want to do nonprofit work, go national, or, aim for bigger. Let's see. Okay. So now everyone's favorite part, the money situation. I didn't know what to call it, so I just titled it The Money Situation. We aim for an effective I recommend that you aim for an effective hourly rate of $50. Now, people see that and they're like, oh my God, $50 an hour, there's no way. I started freelancing. My highest paid job before I started freelancing was like $17.50 an hour. And then I was like, I need to make $50 an hour for this to work. And then it was like, holy cow, how am I going to do that? Remember that when you are an employee, you don't have to carry your overhead. Your employer carries all that overhead. When you are a freelancer, you are responsible for all of your overhead, and that's expensive. That makes you expensive. Now, the trade-off is that you are not as expensive as you would be if you were an employee. Does that make sense? I don't think I said that well. If they were to hire you as a freelancer, they would pay you the equivalent of $50 an hour. If they were to hire you as an employee, it's going to cost them more like $100 an hour. So even though it feels like so much money to you, you are still cheaper than an in-house writer for them. And so you are still worth it. Your services are still that valuable. Even if you don't see it that way, Listen to my podcast episode on the like setting up a rate guide. I talk a lot about the overhead and how expensive, I talk a lot about this stuff. And I think it's a long one, so I don't want to try to cram that all into this presentation that's supposed to be an hour and is already 3/4 over. Um, Alternatively, now I want to say you don't go to your client and say, I charge $50 an hour. This is what you are aiming for with your project rate. So if you have a project that you think will take you 2 hours to do, then I want you to charge $100 for it. You don't say to your client $50 an hour because they're going to freak out and they're going to run screaming and they're going to call you crazy. They won't call you crazy to your face. They'll tell you they can go on Upwork and find someone cheaper. Then they're going to call their buddy and be like, "Can you believe it? She wanted me to pay her $50 an hour." Like, just sidestep that whole thing, and do flat rate pricing that gets you approximately $50 an hour effectively, or aim for 10 cents a word. Those are the two kind of milestones. And some people like flat rate project based pricing, and some people like per word pricing. If you are already if you're already an expert in something and you want to write in that niche, aim for double. So the example that I give for this is the only person, and this is someone like a friend of a friend. So I don't know this person exactly, but I know people who know her and I've heard her story. She was a CPA and she didn't want to be a CPA anymore. She wanted to be a writer. So she started off as a writer for like other CPAs or something. And she brought her tax knowledge to her writing career. So she was able to charge like mega rates from day one because she had this expertise. So if that is you, you can charge more. Don't aim for 50, aim for 100. Don't aim for 10, aim for 20. You might not always get it. You almost certainly will not always get it, but that's what your aim is. So that when someone wants to pay you 2 cents a word or 3 cents a word, you can just laugh and move on. Because that's not okay. It's nowhere near 10 cents a word. Like I say, here some people decide to begin lower, but I want you to aim high. Also note that it is difficult to find work for these rates on the job boards and on sites like Upwork and Fiverr. Now, an exception is if you do the Fiverr Pro thing, if you can qualify for that somehow, which is not something I've done. I don't know how that works, but I know people who've done it. I actually have thought about looking into it just to see what the process looks like. But generally speaking, it's hard to get good rates. There are people out there who are doing it, and there are people out there who can teach you how to make $1 bazillion on Upwork. I am not that person, and those people are outliers. So if that's what you want to do, you'll need to find their information, because that's like what they've done to be able to do that is not typical. People who say anything less than 50 an hour or 10 cents a word is really good pay, they are wrong. They are factually incorrect. And people who say that you'll never get hired for that much are also wrong. They are factually incorrect. You can get hired for that much. If I had been paid, my first gig, which was 11 years ago, I was paid by the hour, and I think it was 25 an hour. If I'd been paid per word, it would have been probably more like 15 cents a word for my first gig, and it wasn't even anything special. So it's possible. You just have to not accept the really low rates, and you have to not accept it when people say you have to work for pennies for like 6 months or a year. I hate that story because it's so not true. It just takes more effort. If you want it to not take as much effort, yeah, you can do it that way. Now, this is what I have learned in 11 plus years of freelancing. There are many paths to success. Some are faster than others. There is no one right way to do things. And this is the knowledge that I have gained that I want to impart. This is what my career has looked like. I got started in 2010. I was kind of like thinking about it for a couple of years. And then in 2010, I really got started. Like I said, my first gig was doing web, like meta description type stuff for a web design agency, product descriptions and stuff like that. Most of my first gigs came through contacts, people I knew in real life who knew what I was doing. And either they needed something or they knew someone who needed something I could do, and they connected us. The end of 2021, I became a single mom. I was actually still pregnant with my first at the time. It was very unexpected, kind of a shock. I The plan had been to be a stay-at-home mom, so then it was like, what am I going to do? Like, what am I going to do? And I decided I was going to do freelance writing. Enter the struggle. And the struggle lasted for a really long time. It lasted for years. But then in 2014, I was like, I'm tired of the struggle. I'm going to figure this out. I got a mentor. I started learning. I started experimenting. And I cracked the code. In January of 2014, I made, I think, $930, maybe $980, less than $1,000. And by December, of that year, I had more than tripled. I had almost quadrupled what I was making in January. Now, bringing it up to more modern times, because that feels like 4 lifetimes ago. Um, Last year, I brought in approximately $150,000 working very part time. And by that, I mean, like, I had a baby. So let's see, I had COVID. And before we knew what COVID was, I had COVID, and then I had a baby. And I had like long haul COVID symptoms, not super long haul, but for like maybe 4 months or so. I had COVID symptoms that kept me really down and out. Plus, I had a baby. Plus, I had 3 other kids to worry about, and like all this stuff going on. And I still brought in 150K working super part time hours. Now, this is after 11 years. Like, this is after 10 years. I'm not saying you can hit this by the end of this calendar year, but it is possible to make really good money working part time hours once you get that ball rolling. Um, some of that did come from course sales, but not a lot of it. I want to say it was like, I don't even know. I don't even know what the split was. It's been a long time since I looked at those numbers. My highest earning month was about a year ago. And I clocked in just over 20K, working very part time hours. Again, we're talking like 15, maybe 20 hours a week, if that. And I'm currently earning between 8 and 15 most months with super low overhead, right? I'm not marketing. I'm not, like, I have my website. I just redesigned my website, so that made my website like super expensive. But generally speaking, my overhead is super low, and I'm working less than half time right now. Again, so less than 20 hours a week. And this is what I'm doing almost entirely from copywriting. I have hardly any course sales. I mean, I might make $500 a month from course sales right now. Um, so that this is what my career looks like. I started at, what did I say, $20 an hour? It might have been $25 an hour to being able to do this, working very part-time hours. Now, again, not an overnight success story. This took a decade, but really, if we look at here, from 2014 to 2019, I think was my first, is that right? My first 6-figure year. I want to say 2014 to 2019, working half time or less almost that entire time. I went from $980 a month to more like $8,000 a month or more. So that's, and I took the very slow path. I took the very slow, hard, making every mistake kind of path. My goal is that you don't have to take as long, but I also want to give you some perspective. James is saying, I started lower, now I'm stuck. James, that happened to me. That happened to me too. I spent all of 2012 and 2013 in the low pay rut. And I got in this cycle where it was like, I needed so much of this low pay work just to keep the lights on that I didn't have time to go out and dig for the high paying work. I just had to take anything that would come at me. And the only thing that was coming at me was like 2 or 3 cents a word. And it took me years to get out of it. I don't want that for you. So that's why we're here. And I'm glad you're here. Okay, who wants the secret, the super secret? I joke because marketers are always talking about secrets. Super secret insider secrets. I have 3 of them for you. Nobody said anything in the chat, but I'm gonna pretend. Secret number 1: how to earn $50 an hour or more as a freelance writer. So how does that actually work? And the main thing is You have to work for real clients. James wants the secret. Yes. You have to work for real clients, real people, real businesses, real connections who actually value your services. Now, the problem is that this is not everybody, and these are not the easiest ones to reach. The easiest ones to reach are the junk jobs on Upwork and the junk jobs on Fiverr and the junk jobs on the job boards. Those are just like sitting there saying, they call to you and they say, come to me, I will pay you, but they don't pay you much. The real work for the real people who are going to pay you real money and who actually value what you bring to the table, that is work that you have to go out and find yourself. I do like to recommend you use the job boards to practice your pitching. That makes kind of the mechanics of this work a little bit easier. Sites like Upwork and Fiverr can help you practice delivering and work out your systems and really get accustomed to dealing with clients. Although clients on those sites, sometimes they're fine and sometimes they're just not worth it. Um, so if you go those routes with the job boards and the marketplace sites, I want you to keep your hours limited. Um, you can't just slap together some stuff and then get hired and then next year you're making six figures. I mean, I'm sure there are people who have done that, but again, they are outliers. They're not normal. It's normal to need some time. It's normal to need at least 6 months to get to the like 4 to 5K a month if you're working on it really hard. Maybe more like a year. Um, and it requires some actual effort. But it can be done, and it is not done on the job boards and on the job sites. That's like the thing. Secret number 2: the fastest way to find your first writing client, because it's like if they're not on the job boards, then what do? The fastest way to find your first client. Ooh, I have an erroneous error. Arrow. To First, I want you to know this: you can find writing clients anywhere. I found a writing client when I made an inquiry about a small group at a church I'd never been to. I found a writing client through a landlord whose buddy needed someone to help him with his book. And my landlord was like, oh, my tenant does that. Here, I'll connect you. I found clients because somebody dropped my name in Facebook threads. I've had clients because a web designer knew of me and used my name. I've had clients because I had a mentor who sent work to me because she knew that I would be a good fit for this thing. Like, you can find your clients anywhere. I've had sales conversations with people in line at the grocery store. I mean, they're everywhere. You never know. I was actually recently, someone reached out to me on LinkedIn looking for a writer. And what's really funny is that guy's, like, his partner at his agency worked at my co-working space. Like, I knew this guy's partner, but we connected entirely separately from her. That was actually kind of a funny moment. Anyway, tap into your personal network. And by that, I don't mean spam your friends and family and bug them to hire you. I mean, mention what you're doing. Be forward with your whole I'm a freelance writer thing, even if you don't feel ready to like start hitting the cold pitching, which is what everyone talks about. Just mention. You can do, somewhere I have a template for what to, I want to say it's inside a course, what to put as a Facebook status, just sort of announcing that this is your new thing. And it's just, hey, y'all, just wanted to let you all know what I'm doing. I've become a freelance writer. If you know anyone who needs anything written, blog posts or reports or anything, I work with businesses and entrepreneurs, and I'd be happy to have a conversation, right? You can get work. You can get work that way. I have a writer friend who, her docket is usually full, but every maybe twice a year, she'll say, starting in August, I have room for 2 more clients on my roster. I'm especially good at this, and this. If you know anyone, please feel free to connect us, right? And she always fills her client roster just by mentioning it on Facebook. And it's not obnoxious. It's just like a, hey, what's up thing. And you can put like a funny, like the cat slamming his paws on the keyboard thing to make it funny and not pushy and not obnoxious. But you have to mention it. You have to let people know what you're doing. That's really what marketing is, letting people know what you do. um, when people ask you, instead of saying, "Oh, I'm just a stay-at-home mom," or "Oh, I just whatever," say, "I'm a freelance writer." Like, own that. Own that. I want to say own that identity, but I don't know if that's the right term. But own that about yourself. I am a freelance writer, and be forward with it. And people are going to notice. And you don't have to say, "I'm a freelance writer. Will you hire me?" Just say, "I'm a freelance writer." And then people are like, "Oh, well, what does that mean? Like, what do you actually do?" And then you say, "I write marketing material for clients," or "I write emails for businesses," or "I, do whatever I do." And they'll be like, "Oh, that's really interesting. Oh, my friend has a business. I should connect you. Great. Here's my number, or great," or whatever. That's how it works. It works in conversations, and there are ways you can work this into your natural conversations. The way that you are existing in the world and moving about the world already has room for you to mention freelance writing in it. I need to take a sip. My throat just cracked. I say here at the end of the slide to be brave. It's really nerve-wracking when you've never done this before. You feel like you're pushy, you feel like you're obnoxious, you feel like nobody cares, you feel, for me at least, I felt stupid. I don't know why. That's like my default when I'm new at something. I'm just like, I feel stupid. Um, but push through. Think about, if someone else did this, would you be offended? No. If someone else told me that they were a writer, I would not be offended. I would be curious. Other people are going to have that same response to you. I hope that helps. I've had conversations with all kinds of writers, and not every single one, but maybe 80% of them, they found their first writing gigs through people who they knew. And so that's why I'm saying this is how you can find that first client. It's through the people that you know. Secret number 3, the one thing you need to get started: you don't need a website, you don't need credentials, you don't need good grades in English class. Excuse me. You don't need a college degree, you don't need marketing expertise. You do need a portfolio or some other credibility marker. The rest of that stuff is nice, but it's not a must-have. Also, you need courage. We have to be brave. Um, that's my rallying cries. Be brave, have courage. You can do this. It just takes a little bit of effort. Some of you may be familiar with Clipscamp. I have a very small info product that helps with the portfolio piece. But you need writing samples, or like I was saying before, talk to a nonprofit and see what they need, and then offer to write it for them. And do that just 2 or 3 times, and you have an amazing portfolio. And you feel really good, and you've helped your community. We all come to this fork in the road. All of us have more time available than we have money, and the priority is to save money. A lot of us start in that spot. It means that you're willing to put in a lot more time over a longer time frame so that you can keep as much of your money as possible. You can figure anything out with Google in time, and it's true. You can. I mean, I did it. It took me years, but I did it. Some of us decide we have more money available than we have time. Yes, Lindsay says she wrote her own blogs on Medium, and used that before she had client work sample. That's another thing that you can do. Absolutely, 100%. Yes. Um, let's see. So some of us have more time available than we have money. Some of us have more money available than we have time. And then priority is to save time. And those folks are willing to spend some money if it means you can shorten the timeline. You skip the months or years of figuring it out, and you can get right to work and right to earning. Oh, and that's kind of the end of my thing. If you find that you are in a position of having more money than you have time, I do have a course that can help. And let me find it. It's called Booked Out Writer. And I'm happy to tell y'all more about it if that is of interest to you. Where is it? Here we are. Okay, this is the, I pulled up the wrong slides again. I'm really out of whack today. Anyway, if you have more time than money, go to ashleygainer.com/blog. I have a ton of resources there for you. Go to my podcast. It's called Copy Chatter. I'm coming up on 100 episodes. I get a lot of reviews that say it's really helpful, and a lot of comments that say it's really helpful. Look for the episode titles for the specific thing where you feel stuck. Also, if you're not in my Facebook group, come into my Facebook group because I give one-on-one feedback there. I offer help. We have feedback threads where you can have your stuff reviewed so that you feel more confident. You can ask about those tricky client emails. You can say, I'm thinking about posting this on my profile to announce that I'm a freelance writer, but I feel really insecure. Would you guys make any changes to this? And we'll help you. Like, we'll help you. We're there for you. That's the whole reason I started this group, was like, I didn't have that group and I wanted it. So I started it so that y'all can have it. If you find that you have more money than you have time, I would say Booked Out Writer is probably a really good option for you. I have some information here. I just want to run through this super quickly. It was made for you. Um, there are no prerequisites to joining it. It teaches you how to fill your client roster. I see that I didn't. I used a template for my slides, and I didn't finish it. Let's see. You can be a complete beginner. You can have some kind of, you can be a little bit advanced. It teaches you how to fill your client roster and be booked out. It's not a writing skills course. It's more like a how to get started in the business thing, but there is writing stuff built into it. Everything is laid out in detail. It covers a whole lot more territory than that. You get checklists, walkthroughs, videos, PDFs, worksheets, more. There's a private student community that I'd mentioned. You also get Clips Camp, which helps you with your portfolio, and you get the blog post writing module from my other course that it, like my, I do have a writing skills course as well, and you get the blog post module from there so that you can put together a portfolio, you have the skills training, and then you have all this business stuff built out. These, just for a gander, are the 10 modules. So there are 4 that are about business itself, understanding the world of marketing, getting your perspective, your portfolio, how to leverage all the relationships you have, how to, do your website, make sure your business itself, the entity is set up correctly. And then we go in depth into LinkedIn client strategies, Facebook client strategies, pitching and cold email strategies, and also how to work with job boards and agencies. Those are like the primary ways that we find work. I have lots and lots of tips and like specific methodologies built in there. Oh, Christy, you're here. Hello. Enrique says, is Clips Camp separate from Booked Out Writer? It is separate. It's a very small piece of Booked Out Writer, but you'll get them both when you get Booked Out Writer. Christy says she's been using it, and it has a lot of information. I'm grateful I decided to do the course. Oh, well, good, Christy. I'm glad that you're liking it. I appreciate the feedback. It's really helpful. It's really helpful when I get feedback. That's my goal, is to help people. Oh, and these are the bonuses. You get the blog post module. You get the Scaling Your Writing Business Masterclass, so that we grow, like which of those 3 directions to go. I have a contract template that I'm almost ready, that's almost done with the review and modification stuff. You have a writer affirmations bonus. You have the community and the Clips Camp. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. Well, I guess it is here and also there. But so that is a good option for you if you feel like you want to put some money behind this freelance writing business. We talk about everything I talked about in this presentation in detailed step-by-step format. There I do an almost, it's not weekly, but it's almost weekly Q&A in there, instant for feedback. I'm adding in like an audit system where you can submit stuff and get my feedback on it. The goal is to answer any question that comes up for you. So that's the course, but I want to talk about, I want to see if anyone has any questions about what we covered today. If you don't feel clear on a certain point, or if you want me to say more about something, or there was something I didn't cover that you wanted me to cover, please. Oh, and I'm going to turn this off because someone emailed me some really good questions, and I'm going to find them. Let me find those questions. And in the meantime, you can unmute yourself if you want. I should have said that in the beginning. Unmute yourself and say hello. Let's see. And ask your question, or you can type it in the chat. Here it is. These are from Diane. Diane, I don't know if you made it today or not. If you did, please say hello. She says, She had questions about health insurance and how to take care of stuff that employers normally take care of: health insurance, quarterly tax payments, other surprises. Um, okay, so health insurance, there is no easy one-stop answer. So some people I know incorporated their business so that the business and then became employees. I want to say it's an S corp, but I actually don't know for sure. They became employees of their business to receive a salary with a W-2 and also use the business to buy health benefits. That is an option. You're probably going to need help from a CPA or somebody to help you do that. I've not done that. My family, uh, on and off, my husband has had jobs that have provided us insurance, but when I didn't have like a husband provided insurance, which has been a lot of my life, I just get it on the marketplace. And it's not fancy, like there's no like magical solution. That was always just the easiest for me. Depending on where you live, you can get pretty good health insurance through the Freelancers Union, which is free to join. And then you can use their insurance, but I think it's only in a number of states, and it's not in my state, so it's not something I know much about. Um, Other insurance, this is something I'm looking into. Um, I don't have business insurance because I am the primary provider. We are looking at life insurance, um, and also disability insurance. And then the other thing that I'm getting now that I'm an LLC, I was a sole prop for the first 10 years, but now I'm an LLC, Gainer Inc. LLC, which I was very happy with. Um, Errors and omission is the main like writer insurance. Um, and what that does is protect you if you like write something and you don't have the like a good indemnity clause in your contract or whatever. And well, anyway, if you get sued, E&O helps you if you get sued. It's not something I carry, but it's something I intend to carry shortly. I've actually got some quotes I need to look at, which I forgot about until now. So that's what the insurance looks like. Quarterly taxes, you submit them yourself quarterly. You can get a little form on the IRS. Just go to the irs.gov and type in quarterly payments, and they'll tell you. You estimate what your income will be for the year. You divide that in four, and then you send them quarterly. If you have a spouse, I think it has to be a spouse who is working and gets a W-2, you can adjust your spouse's withholdings to cover your quarterly payments. That's not something we've ever really done, so I can't say a ton about that, but that's something to ask your tax pro. And what was the other thing she asked about? Oh, any other surprises? If you underpay your quarterly taxes, the IRS is gonna send you if you I forget what the threshold is, but if you underpay your quarterly taxes and then find out on April 15th of the following year that you underpaid, and I want to say the margin is like you owed $1,000 or more, then you get a fine, like a late tax penalty from the IRS. It is not very large. Not that I think you should underpay, but it's not like you're going to go to jail if you get your quarterly tax payments wrong. That's my goal in saying this. I used someone who's supposed to be the best accountant in town, and he totally got things really wrong for me. So I ended up underpaying substantially. So we had like late fees and penalties and underpayment fees, and oh my gosh, it was such a nightmare. It was such a mess. Don't do that. Don't do what I did. However, it's not like it's gonna that there was like a lot more that went into that. If you just underpay, it's not gonna sink you. But that said, you should pay your taxes. I'm trying to think of any other surprises. I heard a presentation once from a lady who got sued. There was this crazy person being crazy, and he threatened to sue her because he didn't like some stuff she published on one of her clients' blogs, and she didn't take him seriously, and then he actually sued her. And that's where I learned about like the kind of insurance that we need. Okay, I see some questions. I saw more questions in my email, and I want to get to those before I Turn away just in case. No, that's all. No, one more. Oh, she just says she has a lot of questions. Okay. Let's look in the chat. How do you raise your rates with current clients without them balking? James, I have a blog post about that. And I don't know the link off the top of my head, but I want to say raise your rates. I'm going to look up the link to that. Here, what I'll do, I'm going to start a post in the big Facebook group. James, are you in the Facebook group? Would it be better if I posted it in the Facebook group or better if I posted it in the chat here? And you can unmute yourself if you want. This is not a webinar. All right, it's loading. I have some guidance in a template. He's in the Facebook group. Okay, well, here's the thing, and then I'll do a post in the group as well, just where I'll corral any links, any other links that come up too. Go, go, go. Here we are. Okay. What else have we got? Lindsay says, my portfolio consists of links that go to published articles and blogs I've written. Curious if there's a different format. Lindsay, what I do, so Contently has a snippet, like a preview snippet that you can use. I don't know if you're on Contently, but at least they used to. You can do a custom snippet. If that's what you want, I would probably do that. But it's like everything. You can't just pick one. I don't think you, well, maybe you can pick one entry. But Contently is, there may be others, but that's the one that comes to mind first.
I guess my question was more like, is that more beneficial? Because I feel like I'm more of like a long form content writer.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I prefer to write anyway. So I feel like the links, sharing the links also gives credibility to like say like, hey, look, my work was published in Forbes or Yahoo or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Is that true? Or,
you know, I think that's the kind of thing I would say, just test it. And then it depends. So if you're sending these in an email, like a pitch or a cold email, I might have the link and then have just a brief explanation of it, or have the brief summary right there in the email. I think that might be most helpful. And then they can decide what they want to click on.
okay, thanks.
Yeah, of course. Well, and also when you're doing a lot of outreach, you can test things. You can say, you know, I'm going to do 50 or even 20 or 10 this way with no preview, and I'm going to do these ones with a preview, and see if you get a better response rate, or see if you get a better higher rate from them. It's, you know, it's like, just test it, see. I don't think there is one definitive right or wrong answer, I guess is what I'm saying. Okay, Jasmine says, do you think it's worth it to pitch yourself to companies with an in-house writing or marketing team? Well, I think it depends. If they have a robust team, they probably have everything they need. But if they have like a marketing manager and a marketing coordinator who's like doing all the random things, you know, maybe it depends on the size of the business. You know, that's like corporates, companies are not something I ever had a lot of luck with either. I tend to do well more in the startup and entrepreneur kind of space. I have a friend, my friend Sarah. I don't know if you know Sarah Griesenbach. She does the B2B Institute. I think she would have a much more informed answer to that question. So I can reach out to her, or you can certainly reach out to her and tell her that I sent you, because I thought she was smarter than me, which is true, and she'll think that's funny. But let me ask I'm gonna, I'll save the chat and I'll ask Sarah. And Jasmine, I know that you're in the group, so I can tag you when I get an answer if you'd like. Or you can reach out to her too. I don't know. Dinah, am I saying that right? Dinah says, is there a website? Sorry, is there a web-based service? I need glasses. Is there a web-based service where I can keep portfolio items housed? That would be handy. Yes, there are free ones and there are paid ones. The free one that I recommend the most is Contently, and it's contently.net, I think is the freelancer one. Contently is a massive content marketing agency. And so one of the ways that they like to get writers to write for them is they have this platform where you can set up a portfolio. And then if you optimize your portfolio there, you can get found by the Contently editors when they need someone to write about the stuff that you say you write about. So I like that one. I've been on Contently for years and years, and I've never been contacted for work, but I know a lot of folks who have, which just tells me I didn't optimize my profile well enough, or I don't write in the kind of niches that hire Contently. The paid one, I forget what the paid one is called. I want to say it's Writerly. I think it's $7 a month, and it's supposed to be very good. See if I can find it. It's clippings.me. Is that the one I'm thinking of? Has anyone else used a paid portfolio site? And again, feel free to unmute yourself. Oh, clippings might be free. Anyway, there are options. Amanda says, when you write anything that's going to be a sample of your work, do you have it edited by someone else first? Amanda, I think that depends on your comfort level. I just let myself go cold on it and edit myself. I also know a lot of people who hire editors or proofreaders, or they'll run it through Grammarly or another grammar checker. That's another one of those things where there's not necessarily a right or wrong answer. It just depends on your comfort level. Dinah says, another question, I have a few blog pieces going online shortly. Can I just assume people will believe me when I say I wrote them? If your byline is not on there, or if someone else's name is on there as the byline, you would need to probably get permission if you're going to share them as specific portfolio pieces. And when your byline is not on your work, you need to charge more than what your regular rate would be. That's I should add that to this presentation, because when you're ghostwriting, turns out I can't write and talk at the same time. When you're ghostwriting, and you're not able to include these pieces in your portfolio, you charge them more because you're not able to use them in your portfolio. It makes your life more difficult, so they have to pay you more. That's sort of how I think about it. That's not the orthodox way of thinking. That's just kind of how I see it.
Okay, I have a question on that because almost all my work is ghostwriting.
Yeah.
So, and I share the links to those articles. It doesn't say it's obviously have my name on it, but if I say I'm a ghostwriter, can I share those articles?
You would need to get permission if you're sharing the specific articles. If you're just doing a masthead where you're like as seen on, you wouldn't need to get permission for that.
Because it's a public article.
Yes,
so anyone can.
If it has someone else's name on it,
like if it's a publication, like Forbes or Yahoo or something, usually it's the person's name on it is like the editor for that publication, right?
I always like to get permission. I don't know that they're going to sue you for sharing it, but I like to have permission. I think a bigger thing to take away from this is that you would need to charge more if you don't get the byline.
Yeah, and I am. for this particular client.
Yeah. Okay, good.
Yeah. So would it make more sense then for me to share, like, because, I write these articles in my own system. Like, I use Google Docs basically.
Yeah.
Should I share that, or would that also not be
It would be kind of the same thing.
okay?
Have you ever shared a link that didn't have your name on it and you got pushback? Like someone said, "How do I know you wrote this?"
No,
Yeah, if it's not an issue, then I guess it's not an issue.
mostly because I'm saying like these are ghostwritten articles
Mm-hmm.
for one of my clients. So
Yeah, the only way that you
okay.
could really get into any trouble is if you have signed some sort of non-disclosure with your client, anything that would prevent you from sharing it.
Yeah, or if it's like some kind of confidential
Yeah. Oh yeah.
information or something.
Yes, for sure. Otherwise, I would say it's probably more of a courtesy to get permission.
Okay. All right, thanks.
Yeah, cool. Let's see. Oh, any more questions? James says his portfolio is on Wix. Wix seems a lot more easy to use these days than it used to be. I used to not recommend Wix because it seemed really weird and janky and odd, but I took a swing by there a few months ago and they've really improved, the past like 5 years since I looked at them. Okay, it looks like everyone has to head out. Yeah, we went way over time. I'll have to work on that. But if you have any more questions, of course, feel free to email me or you can post in the group. And yeah, I guess that's about it. All right, y'all. I'm gonna send out the replay and post the right link in the Facebook group, and I'll talk to you later.